Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in. Wanted to go over my bike again for some folks, show them what I've got, talk about the single speed a little bit this time. This bike is a 2010 Gary Fisher. The bike got a little dated. The derailleurs and shifters were a little worn, the cables were probably needed to be replaced, the chain, the shock was worn out and all kind of stuff. So a couple years ago I converted it to a rigid front end and a single speed drivetrain. I kept it as a mountain bike for a while. I rode it for about a year or so, still as a mountain bike, but just rigid single. Here's my mountain bike tires that were on it before. But you can look at my other video. Maybe I'll post a link in the description of a video I did when I first changed this bike over to single speed. Like I said, it still had the mountain bike bars and tires and was still set up where I was doing more trail riding with it. But recently I've changed it over to more of a gravel bike. You can see I've got some gravel bars on it, some drop bars. I've got another video also, if you want to check my channel, talking more about the gravel bike setup or a little bit more about those bars. I'm liking them so far, but today I wanted to focus on the single speed, what I did here and what I like about it and what I don't like about it. I mentioned before that the parts were getting worn out and dated that were on it. So I took them off, which brings me to, the first thing I like about the single speed is that it's cheap. It was cheap to do. I could have spent a lot of money on, replacing the shifters and derailleurs and all, and spent a lot of money on a 10-year-old mountain bike when I, was looking to get a new bike anyways. My new Commencal over there is my new trail bike. So I didn't want to get rid of this bike, but I didn't want to spend much money on it. So I did this, and it's made it a lot of fun. So it was cheaper. To start out, what I did, and you might see it in my other video if you go check it out from a couple years ago, but I bought this kit from DMR Bikes, and all I did, the front, it was a 2x, so I took the other chain ring off. If you look over here, you can still see the mounting holes here on this crank where it had the smaller sprocket in the front. I just took that smaller sprocket off and I kept the outer mounting surface for the for a single sprocket. Took the shifter off the front. This is actually more of a BMX style sprocket here, but it really doesn't matter if you're single speed. That's not a big deal. In the back, what I did, again with this kit, DMR Bicycles, this is a tensioner that it comes with, along with some spacers that go in here. So what you do, this is still the factory wheel, and I think it was an 8-speed. You take the 8-speed cog off, and this kit comes with some spacers that fill in the gaps here. So you put your spacers in wherever you need them so that your one gear right here lines up with your front sprocket. So I've got a little spacer here, there's a small one, and then a wider one here. So the spacers take up the room there. That's still the factory cassette there, hub. It goes right on. So the bike is still a freewheel hub. This is not a fixie. It's a single speed. It's the same hub that was on it before. So cheaper. Did all this because it was cheaper. Another thing that I really like about it is the simplicity. I like to simplify things as much as I can when I can. I love the the gear options on my new bike over there, it's a one by, which I prefer a one by, just to get rid of this front shifter that you don't need anyway, or at least I don't. You know, if I'm running a one by like on my new bike, I like that because it just, you know, cuts down on the shifters and derailleurs. So I like that. So the simplicity of running this single speed, there's no derailleurs, there's no adjustments that need to be made. The maintenance on it's much lower, much less maintenance. There's no slapping around of my derailleur. There's no chain slap on my chain stay. It's simple. I like that. I like that it's quiet. There's no clunking around. Things get bumpy. The bike runs real smooth, real quiet. There's really nothing to hear there. The bike's really smooth and quiet. So I enjoy that about it. Again, the simplicity of it. So the simplicity is definitely a big plus. Getting the being in this one gear. Sometimes, you know, you can get in your head about are you in the right gear or not, or you're changing gears going up a hill, or you're not in the right gear to go down a hill. Well, on this bike, you're in the gear you're going to be in. So if you want to go faster, then you better stand up and pedal harder, you know, whatever the case is. This is the gear. So there's no confusion there in being in the right gear or not being in the right gear. This is it, which I like. It just makes it simple. It makes it fun. I ride this bike a lot just around town. We have some paved rail trail. Now where I live is fairly flat. Topography, you know, we don't have a lot of hills, so uphill is not a big deal around here. But the fact that it's just one gear, you don't think about your gears. You can enjoy the ride, all the rest of it, and you never have to change gear. So that's another plus. Simplicity, it's cost effective. It's just the single speed works good. It's quiet. So a lot of those are big pluses. Initially, the big plus for me was the cost. Just I didn't want to spend the money on it, so I did this. It was really cheap, and I'm really glad I did because I'm really enjoying it. I really enjoy that. So some things that I don't like about it, I put hate in the description, but it's not necessarily that I hate it. It's just, you know, there are sometimes, sure, when I'd like to change gear. Maybe I am going up a little hill, a bridge or something, and maybe I would like to change gear. Well, I can't. And that's okay. I have other bikes if I want to do that sort of thing. Can't change gear. I might max out on my speed. You know, I've only got one gear, so once I spin out, that's as fast as I'm going to go. I'm not going to go any faster. Riding this bike now a little more as a gravel bike type bike. I ride it more on the road. If I were to ride with a group, chances are I'd be going slower than the rest of the group. When I ride by myself, it's not a big deal. Doesn't matter at all. I ride whatever pace I want, which my pace on this bike is, if I ride a 10 or 20 mile route, my pace is going to be 13.5 to 14 miles per hour. That's about all I can do on this bike. Is 14 miles per hour is getting it pretty good for me. Where a more dedicated gravel bike or road bike, or some of those guys are, I don't know, 18 miles per hour, maybe 20 mile per hour pace. But mine's 14. That's just where it's at with this gear ratio. This particular gear ratio is a 40 by 18. 40 by 18. When I went with this ratio, it just happened to be the magic ratio that I no longer needed this tensioner anymore. The tensioner that I was showing you that went down here, it's a fixed tensioner. You would put it under the chain and it would bolt up here, and you would mount it in one position, and that's where it stayed. It's not spring loaded, it was just fixed, and it worked fine when I had a different gear ratio. But I lucked out with this ratio when I went to more of the road feel of the bike. I put a higher gear ratio, the 40-18. with this chain, speaking of which, is a half-link chain. It's a BMX style chain. We use them a lot in BMX. You can just fine tune the length of the chain much better with the half link. So I've gotten my chain length right with this gear ratio. It works perfect with this vertical dropout, that the chain just happened to be the right size that I don't need the tensioner anymore. It is a vertical dropout, so you can't pull the wheel back to tighten your chain. That would be a horizontal dropout so that you could tighten your chain. I don't have that option with this bike. It's just vertical. It's one position and that's it. So in most cases you would probably need that tensioner, but like I said, in this case, the right chain length with this chain stay and these gears, it just happened to work just right to where I can put this up and the chain is tight enough that I don't need the tensioner. So that works out good. So that's what I've got with my single speed mountain bike, gravel bike. I enjoy the single speed. It's a lot of fun. It's just simple. It makes the bike a lot of fun. It's something a little unique when I do get out with some other folks. Sometimes they're shocked that I'm riding on a single speed bike. But it's fun. It's a little something different. And I do like that. So if you have any questions about it, just leave me a comment below. I'm pretty good about responding to those comments. I'll put a link to a couple other videos on this bike. Maybe the first video that when I first went rigid and single speed, and then there's another video where I talk a little bit more about these bars and the whole gravel bike idea. If I don't get that link, just you welcome to check my my page. There's only a few videos there and you'll be able to find it easily. But I really like the single speed. If you have an older bike with some jammed up gears, take them off, put this on, check out this DMR. This is what I use. There are other brands or other companies that make something similar. This came with this thing and the spacers that I needed. So check that out. If you have any questions, leave a comment, and I appreciate you watching, and y'all have a good day. Thank you.